there's anything else that is there anybody we need to wait for? Are we good IT wise?
I think so. And we are right at 8:30.
Okay.
So, and I do have all the required staff members on the line. So.
All right. Well, I have that it is 8:31. So we're going to call the audit committee to order. First order of business is the approval of the minutes. I obviously was not present on October 22nd, 2020, but since we have enough of other members that can approve the minutes, I will recuse myself if somebody would like to make a motion to accept the minutes.
This is Morgan Hall. Hey, I make a motion that we accept the minutes from the October meeting.
This is JP. I'll second it.
Great. And all those in favor?
I can't do it either because I was not a member at the time this occurred. So under Robert's rules, I can't say that I can approve the minutes.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you. And this morning, I do believe has Dr. Glass joined us yet?
Yes, I'm showing him in the participant list.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I'm here. I've been here all the
Okay, wonderful. I believe you are going to make an introduction of our next presenter.
I am. And it gives me a great honor and privilege to introduce Ms. Winsome Condra. She has been with us for about 5 months. I may be off by a month. Ms. Condra was her role and the position was a first initiative out of questions starting in July and the realization that the agency had been without an internal auditor for some time. She was the product of managing directors doing a full search of talented folks from across the region. And I have been delighted to work with her since she joined the organization. She has done a top to bottom review of the last 4 years of activities in the service and has a lot of work ahead that she'll describe to continue to review all of the practices in the service and to hopefully, account for every single policy and a procedure in the organization to help us be as efficient and effective and protect the reputation of the organization moving forward. So with that, I look forward to seeing Ms. Condra's presentation, and I hope that she gets the full support of the committee in moving forward with plans for the next couple of fiscal years. Ms. Condra.
Thank you, Dr. Glass, for the very nice introduction. As you mentioned, during my first 5 months, and it is 5 months, so you're correct. I was able to connect with MES staff either through the questionnaires, team meetings, discussion, and being on other projects to understand MES's culture, strengths, and areas of improvement. So today I would like to talk about the agenda, which is the executive FY20 travel and expense review that I performed. I want to touch a little bit on the fraud hotline log that I'm keeping, and also the audit charter, introduction to the audit charter, and also the introduction to the FY21 and FY22 risk assessment internal audit plan, and then internal audit next steps. Next slide, please. So for the executive FY20 T&E review findings, my scope basically was I did a detailed testing on FY20 expenses just to determine adherence to MES's reimbursable and one card policies and insurance controls are in place to deter misappropriation. As you see, I have broken down the audit scope area into 3 groups: reimbursement, one card and mileage, And the number of recommendations by priority, I have it rated as top, high, medium. And the top and high basically means that these recommendation needs immediate improvement or action, basically. So as I go to the findings are in the order of top, high, and medium. Next slide, please. So I don't want to go through all. Here are my the three findings that are top ratings, and I don't want to go through. You guys can read afterwards, but basically, I'm just going to do like a high-level summary of it. The first one is basically we found that MES reimbursable policy was not being adhered to due to a lot of reasons, not submitting receipts. What else? Not following all the listed requirements that the policies had for reimbursement had. So one of the findings, the impact on the findings is MES ran the risk of the IRS not qualifying for reimbursed expenses as an accountable deductible plan. So under an accountable plan, if one reimbursement or advance doesn't follow the rules, so basically MES is following the rules, accounting rules that IRS would want us to put in for reimbursement, to say, okay, we're reimbursing our employees, right? And it's not part of their compensation, right? Because if it was part of their compensation, then we would have to pay taxes on that. So by being it reimbursable, we don't have to pay taxes. But if they find that we're not following the rules, then they would look at everything and they'll just say, okay, this all applies. You know, MES has to pay back taxes, penalties, and amendment costs, right? So the recommendation that I have is create a travel and non-entertainment guideline, right? We have policies, but we need guidelines for MES employees to ensure reimbursed activities are accounted for. Also, if we can establish vendor accounts and or expand the usage of the corporate card where we lessen the risk of oh, is it reimbursable? Is it a traveling expense for the company? Is it, you know, is it compensation? So that would eliminate that factor. Any questions on that first finding? Okay. So the second finding is based in, no, go back. Is based on saying that, so this is basically feeds into the first finding, but this is a one card where 92% of the purchase that I reviewed for FY20, not the, you know, going back, just for FY20, did not have a receipt as per the one card policy, although it's not a requirement for the IRS for one card, but it's a requirement for a policy to ensure that employees are not misusing the one card for personal use, right? And that's the impact of them not, you cannot verify what the expenditure was, right? So the impact is the increased risk of MES employees misusing the one card for personal use may lead to the loss of MES funds. So my recommendation is to communicate and enforce the one card policy requirement to provide documentation for transactions.
Could I ask you a question, please?
Sure.
I'm not familiar with. Can you tell me what a one card is?
So the one card is the corporate card that MES gives to their staff, executives. They use it for purchases at the location. So it's a corporate card, and they just call it a one card.
It's not a debit, right? It's a
no, it's a credit card.
Credit card. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the next finding I have, and that is a top rating, is mileage. So what I observed was there's a lack of control to validate employees' commute miles and the reduced mileage rate due to pool car availability, which when looking at the records, it appears that there is an overpayment of $2,754, which is like 37% of the total mileage paid, right? And the reason being there are rules within the reimbursement policy, but there's no check no control to check that. There's nothing within the Workday system to ensure that that happens, where the information that's in Workday could validate if that person's commute mile is accurate or not. And I've worked at places where there's the capability is to do that, where when you put in for a reimbursement mile, it automatically puts in, if you click commute miles, it automatically puts in your commute mile from the office to where you live. So the impact of this is increased risk of employees submitting fraudulent mileage activity, may lead to the loss of MES funds and misuse of budgeted dollars, right? One of my recommendations are work with IT to determine if Workday has the capability to validate commute miles and pool car availability per MES location. Also, update reimbursement policy to include validating after hours stop at headquarters versus pursuing home. So this came about because I did not see, I saw that a few people were putting odd times that they were at the office. That didn't seem appropriate. Next slide, please. And for the high rating, there was just 2 of them. And the first one is under the audit scope area of reimbursement. And basically for this one, I saw that reimbursable transaction that appeared non-reimbursable, such as the purchase of fuel, equipment or vehicle, and tuition reimbursement, where a corporate fuel card is available for those operational expenses, and tuition assistance should be managed by HR, right? It shouldn't be on the go through the system where it's led up to just an automatic, okay, I will just reimburse you. The corporate fuel card is another is an option for operational, where it separates, right, a reimbursable that goes back to the employee versus that should be it should be an expense for the company from an operational perspective. So it's kind of, those expenses were commingled. The impact of that is increased risk of expenses not reported on the appropriate project, which may lead to improper matching of income and expenses, and also risk of reimbursed tuition being fraudulent due to lack of review from HR for validation. So HR has their own process to validate tuition assistance, and if it does not go through the HR process, then that validation is not being performed. My recommendations are adopt a conservative definition of what qualifies as reimbursable business expenses, and consider having a separate plan to reimburse non-deductible business expenses as compensation. Develop and communicate a guideline to process tuition assistance activities to ensure required documentation are reviewed by HR. Any questions on that? Okay. No, go back. 2s and 2s. Everything else is going to go fast, I swear. One card is a high. As for the one card audit scope area, it's a high, and this is what I basically looked at in detail, but it all boils down to employees not looking at the option to reduce costs for MES, right? Where we're not utilizing the tax exempt to reduce our costs. Certain purchases did not look like they were, in the best interest of the agency, right? So the impact of this finding is misuse of MES and budget funds would impact the image of MES, lost opportunity to reduce costs by not utilizing MES tax exempt status within the state of Maryland, and pursuing national vendor/merchant accounts, right? My recommendation is for procurement to perform an analysis of MES indirect spend to obtain a national account with vendors where it seems appropriate, and also pursue merchant discount opportunities like the tax exempt. Where we can go to the Maryland state and list. They have a list of companies. Go towards that so we can get the discounts being a Maryland state agency. Next slide. Any questions? Sorry. No? Okay. So this is the last one. These are mediums, so they don't really need. Yes, that's a medium is a good rating, but it's not as much impact as the tops and the highs, and they're all under for the one card audit scope area. So I found that there were a couple of purchases for a resort that exceeds the $5,000 limit that had to be approved through procurement. They were separated, but they all was under the one bill. And I also observed that the documentation had date discrepancies where the date on the receipt is after the posting date. The impact of that is misuse of MES and budget funds would impact the image of MES. A potential gap in the control to capture the criteria required for one card purchases would impact the procurement process. My recommendations are communicate and enforce the one card policy requirement to provide documentation for transactions. Also, request procurement to ensure the controls and workday are capable to capture the criteria required for one card. Because workday should be a control in itself. The next one I found was I saw that there were purchase of promotional product where a pre-authorization was not evident in the review. Also, the order was paid before being invoiced. These actions were not compliant with the one card policy. The impact on that is a potential gap in the control to capture the criteria required for one card purchases that would impact the procurement process. And again, my recommendation is like above, request procurement to ensure the controls and work are capable to capture the criteria required for one card. So those are my findings for the travel and expense review for the executive teams for FY20. Any questions?
I do have one question. Is there now or can there be something from one card that tells you as the auditor or some other person who is engaged in working the money when something has been done on a one card? In other words, is there some way that you can get one card getting to MES when there is a charge on it?
So I'm not aware of that capability. However, I am going to talk with, I'm going to do a review of the one card to make sure that we're taking advantage of certain rebates. The more we use the one card as an agency, the more rebates MES would get back as a incentive from the banks. So that's something that I'm going to be talking to procurement about in the future.
Is one card, does that come from a particular bank or institution?
So it does come from a bank. I don't recall which bank, but it's do you know what bank it is?
It is U.S. Bank.
U.S. Bank.
U.S. Bank. Well, it sounds like it would be good. I mean, we have to. I'm not.
And
familiar with it, but
just smoking.
Yeah.
Just smoking. We'll check with procurement on exactly what controls and if there are adjustments to controls that can put that in place. For instance, blocking all over 5,000 that don't go through procurement and just cut that off. So, but we wanted to get this to you and have the committee vote and then have the board vote to just solidify this as policy in the agency directed from the board.
Exactly. I'm just trying to find what is that's an easiest way for us to have a good control over things, and I'm sure it's on the way. I just wondered what this one, because I'm not familiar with one card, whatever. But all right, thank you very much, ma'am.
No worries, no worries.
Hey, I have one question too. Approximately how many employees have a one card?
I'm not sure. What I looked at was only the executive team.
Okay.
So yeah, going forward, as I do my review, I'll be doing an audit of that to have a sense of who has it and what's the criteria, and audit that.
Okay.
Because of the diverse. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Patel. You have the solid answer, I'm sure. Go
Yes, we have about 115 employees who have U.S. bank cards.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next slide, please, if no more questions. So, and coming into the organization, into the agency, I was given the fraud hotline. So that's one of my duties, is to monitor that and investigate and on any type of potential, whistleblower calls. So I did receive a call January 21st this year. It's the potential fraud is a timekeeping scheme, and based on the whistleblower, it's been going on for 3 years. This is at the steam plant location where I've spoken to the managing director, where it lacks that location lacks time clocks and cameras, and it's out of the prison grounds, so there's no check-in from that side, and investigation is ongoing on this. Next slide, please. So this is so in starting my position in October, I saw that there were no standard documents dictating the audit function, despite having prior auditors, as Dr. Glass had mentioned before. In saying that, I'll be starting an audit department. That's what I'm tasked with, where I'll have to put in place standard policies and procedures to govern the audit function, and make it an intricate part of MES culture to ensure continued compliance, right? Is the forefront of MES. And this is part of the efforts to be transparent and accountable to our clients, right? And this is part of MES's goals and objective, and also Dr. Glass's. And in order to do that, an audit charter has to be established as required by the Institute of Internal Auditors. And I know Dr. Glasses go IIA, and he makes fun of me all the time, but he goes the IIA thing. So it's a standard where we're governed, internal auditors are governed by this institution, where we do continuous education. I'm a member of the IIA, and I follow their guidelines in terms of an auditor being independent and unbiased in performing audits. So I just would like, this is a little bit of Audit 101 on the audit charter and why it's important. So basically, it's a formal document, right? Approved by the government. It has to be approved by the governing body, which is Dr. Glass, and or the audit committee, which is also the governing body, and agreed to by management. And that's all Dr. Glass, right? So you have the audit committee, you have the director, and basically, and my expected, the audit and the audit group. So basically, the minimum it defines is internal audit's purpose within the organization, internal audit's authority, internal audit's responsibility, and the internal audit's position within the agency. So every company that has an internal audit function has an audit charter, and it should be made public. It's a public on the intranet, where our staff could go and access and know what the audit charter is. The importance of a charter is it provides the organization a blueprint of how internal audit will operate, and helps the governing body to clearly signal the value it placed on internal audit's independence, I had mentioned before. Ideally, it established reporting lines for the internal auditor in charge that supports that independence by reporting functionally to the governing body or those charged with governance, and administratively to executive management. It also provides the activity, the need authority to achieve its task. Example, unfettered access to records, personnel, and physical properties relevant to performing the audit. I did talk to Vishal about having something on the intranet for the audit function where it would house that document after it's signed by Ms. Heller, Dr. Glass, and myself. Any questions on this? Nope. Okay.
Hi, this is Morgan Hall.
Okay.
What size staff are you actually looking at for the audit?
Looking at what? I'm sorry.
Staff. How many staff?
Dr. Glass says that I get no staff. It's just
Miss-
me, myself, and I. And it's
We
up
are-
to, and it is up to the audit committee and Dr. Glass after, and that's why I do an audit plan, which I'm going to show now to see what is out there and the need for it. And if it's a need for where, hey, I need, Winsome needs help, if we want to get certain things done, then it's up to the audit committee and Dr. Glass and the board for that. So, and
I'll say, Mr. Hall, the executive team has been supporting, and other units of the agency have been supporting Ms. Condra. If we ever get to the point where the board particularly would like her to accelerate her activities, as you'll see in her plan, there's a limit to how many audits she can perform individually for each unit, and if it would be a board decision to accelerate her activities.
Okay. I was just curious if this was going to be like a totally separate part of the executive branch, or like managing branch with a separate division and a staff of personnel.
No. It's similar to the federal general inspector's offices. However, it's a small agency. In state agencies, there are internal auditors at every state agency, and they work with finance and with some larger entities like MDOT headquarters, where I came from, will have a staff there and at the business units. So yes, there are larger entities with 10,000 employees that end up having an audit office of 10 people. We're not looking at that at this time. We're looking at supporting internally through executive team support, and also in the business units where she goes, in the managing units where she goes.
Okay, tracking. Thanks a lot.
Good job. Next slide, please. So, as part of further standardizing the audit function, an annual risk assessment was performed, which helped to develop an internal audit plan. I'm not going to go through my need there. It's as you see, 34 pages. I'm just going to go through the contents where the document states executive summary. It also has a risk assessment methodology where it shows how I came up with the document and what was my process. It also has a questionnaire response themes where it flags like certain themes where a lot of that might be high risk that keep on coming up during the questionnaires or in discussions. Also, I gave there's a bird's eye view of FY20, and it always would be prior year. So the next risk assessment will highlight FY21's staff overview. It highlights the staff allocation. It highlights procurement activities, highlighted FY20 revenue activities. It also has an analysis of agency audit units and associated risk. It also identifies the top 25 agency risks. And then it in turn, it has the internal audit plan within this document. The appendix here shows it's very detailed in terms of if you have any questions, believe you me, that document will answer it for you. All you have to do is continue reading. It has the appendix, and the available would be the ranking of all audit units, like what their rankings are, the allocation of internal audit resource, what that would look like, and then and that would Mr. Morgan, that would answer some of your questions in terms of allocation of the internal audit resources. And then the 2021 internal audit timeline. Like basically that's like saying, okay, what's my schedule? Am I going to meet with the audit committee? What that looks like from year 21 perspective. Next slide, please. Any questions? I'm sorry. Any questions? Okay. So in terms of the annual plan for fiscal years 21 and 22, and as you know, it covers the whole calendar year, also 2021, all of 2021. So the first one I have here is the annual risk assessment. And this is where what I did basically, and this is saying this is how I spent my time. So you guys are going to see how I spent my time in time I've been here. So I perform agency-wide risk assessments required by internal audit professional standards to aid in selection of the annual audit work. My budgeted hours is 325 hours. And these are my time frame that I performed this risk assessment from November 2020 to February 21. It also indicates what risk it covers. Didn't cover any risk right there. So also monitor fraud, a hotline, monitor reports made to the fraud hotline, as well as items reported directly to IA. So IA is internal audit. During the annual risk assessment process or throughout the year, I coordinate with MES management and the Attorney General for appropriate follow-up. So I'll be working, and again, Mr. Morgan, about who I'll be working with, Attorney Generals, MES management. They will help me to get what I need to do my investigations, and sometimes external. So I place 85 hours, and these are just budgeted, so it might exceed, it might be less. So I anticipate that from I started, right, November 2020 to June 21, I'll be looking at monitoring the fraud hotline. Then there's also special investigation, and that special investigation is any requested audits from MES management or the Attorney General that are not identified in risk assessment and needs immediate attention. I budget 200 hours dedicated for that, and my time frame is November 2021 to June 2021. And it covers the risk of the 1 and 2. So when you get the documents, you can go back and see what risk is number 1 and what risk is number 2. At this time, due to time constraint, I can't do that. Go through that. And then it's auxiliaries, meaning any little thing, like for instance, we have the external auditors. So and that's on every year, fiscal year, that I will help finance do be the oversight of external audit, internal control, financial reporting review. So I set aside 110 hours to help as much as I can with that. And they're usually in here between May 21 to June 21. And then these other 3 items, audit units I'm going to talk about, these are actually going to be audits that I'm going to review. And this one has to deal with compliance, and it's dealing with contract management, where I'll be looking at the proper execution of contracts and agreements, terms and condition compliances, cost reimbursement review, and budget management. I allocated 350 hours, stating that I would begin this audit next month, and I give myself till June to be finished. And again, the risk covered is on the right-hand side. The next one, audit unit, is financial controls, financial and internal controls. So this one deals with procurement management. I'll be looking at the proper level of approval, inventory/asset tracking processes, accurate cost allocation, and appropriate business expense. So I allocated 200 hours and anticipate to start this in June 2021 and lasting July. Next one is operational, and this will be a site management review where I'll be looking at the proper site coverage, proper timekeeping/monitoring system, purchasing process, whether it's be one card or reimbursable, maintenance of equipment and vehicle, and inventory asset management. I put 285 budgeted hours for this, and looking to start this August 21 to December 21, and it will be covering this. So that's my F1 and FY20 internal audit plan that I'm dedicated to performing. Next slide, please. Any questions? Nope. All right. So next internal audit steps, as you see, we have our meeting today, and this is what my deliverables were. And then I anticipate that we'll have another meeting in October 21, and where hopefully I can present the FY21 and FY23 internal audit plan. You always have to be a step ahead of the audit plan, because you never know what might happen. Again, I get special investigation, so all these stuff has to be, I always have to have a plan to show the audit committee and also the director of MES. The next step is also I will email. I already emailed Dr. Glass the audit charter and the final risk assessment document, and he also in turn, I believe, sent it to Ms. Heller. So for the audit charter, we would have to have signatures. After your review, Dr. Glass and Ms. Heller, your review, signatures, and I will sign it so we can put it as a document and present it to the board as an official audit charter. And this is with, if I'm no longer here and Dr. Glass or anyone in this team is not there, that document will be whole. It will dictate any future auditors coming in how M&S would like their audit function to operate. The next step is after the review is performed and Ms. Heller and Dr. Glass gives me the thumbs up, we will be distributing the risk assessment audit plan to MES executives, and I know Ms. Heller, you'll forward it to the board, the rest of the board team members. And not sure if this is going to be a document that we also house on the internet page as to be visible. And that's something that we'll have to talk offline. And that's it for me. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Condra.
Yes.
I believe we have some takeaways from this. We have some actions. The way that I'm reading this, and after having read through the charter, it appears, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we don't need to do this today, if it's at a later date, but it appears as though we need to approve the charter. The audit committee in particular needs to approve the audit charter. We need to approve the internal audit plan. Is that today that we approve that?
You can, yes, if possible.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and then eventually we will be, I'm guessing it's not today, approving the internal audit department's budget and resource plan.
So that is, yes, basically. So the audit, that basically is just for FYI, because it's gonna change, right?
Okay.
It's just something you don't need to approve on that, but it's something that is to be known that this is what it's gonna look like, and it might change and it might not. It's just something. It's just a budget, just like the finance budget. And the resource basically is me.
Okay, thank you. And then I would like to discuss maybe scheduling the next meeting. There's a recommendation over in the margin that says meet every quarter or twice within the current year. Should we be meeting once more prior to the end of this fiscal year?
I don't know. I think because the process, this is like my suggestion was going forward, and then having my discussion with Dr. Glass in our meetings, we and looking back at prior audit committee meetings, they do meet twice. However, because I started in October, we're not following the traditional like meeting. So I think eventually it's going to be twice within the current quarter fiscal year, because you will have the auditors coming in, right? And that you guys have to meet with the auditors and so forth. So I would say this is something that we probably need to think about and maybe come back to.
Okay, great. So at this point, I believe we need two motions of the audit committee, one to approve the charter and one to approve the internal audit plan. So I would be happy to entertain a motion.
Sure, this is JP. I'd like to approve the charter. I'd like to
Okay, JP has motioned to approve the charter.
Second,
Was that Judge Smokin?
yes, second.
I think it has to be a member, excuse me, of the audit committee.
I thought I was. Am I not?
I believe it's Morgan Hall and JP.
Okay,
This is Morgan Hall. I second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor or any discussion? I think we've discussed, but any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. And potentially a motion to approve the internal audit plan.
This is Morgan Hall. I make a motion that we approve the internal audit plan.
Okay,
And this is JP. I'll second it.
wonderful. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. So, Ms. Condra, have we hit all of the points for today's meeting that you would like us to discuss?
Yes, I definitely, this is all it. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And I believe Mr. Patel is up next with the RSM annual audit process.
That's correct. Good morning. Thank you very much, Ms. Condra. Great presentation. So I'll go through 2 slides on RSM US audit process. I changed my mind at the last minute, so Ms. Fuller, can you present the second slide first? The next one. Okay. So for last 2 years, RSM US LLP are our financial auditors. 2 years ago, we went through inviting the proposals, finance team evaluated and selected RSM US LLP for a 3-year contract, which is subject to renewal next year. Well, we'll renew this year, but it will be applicable to the audit for fiscal year 2022. Before that, SB and Company were our auditors for 6 previous years. Since COVID-19, a lot of work is done remotely. The audit process from RSM has changed. Before, they used to come every May for 1 week in the office with a couple of staff members from RSM, and will physically review all the records, all financial transactions, timesheets. I'm going to go into the detail what they review in the next slide, but they were reviewing, I would say, close to 1,000 documents in that preliminary audit process. Then they will come back at the end of mid-August, and then they will be at the headquarters for about a month to review more documents. They will come up with the questions, will require more supporting documents. They will go through all the financial transactions, the trial balance, to wrap up the audit by September 30. Now it is for the last year, it has been done everything electronically. We scan the documents, send it to them. We have it in the Laserfish. We send it to them, but the testing in the process has remained the same. So our auditors ask for a lot of reports. We give them 100% of the transactions. Then they select portion of it, which is they want to test it. So they will ask for supporting documentation, and finance provides all that documentation in electronic format. One of the criteria they use is they use the comparative balances for MES and Midshore. They do 2 separate audit processes, one for MES and one for Midshore. And they usually go with percentage difference between the fiscal years and ask us for explanation and documentation. Their threshold for Midshore is different than MES, so we had to provide a lot of documentation because they go by the overall scope of the work that we are doing at Midshore versus MES. As I mentioned, they start preliminary audit in May and finish the audit by the end of September. RSM, one of the auditors for RSM will review our workday system, controls, security, processes, and they will verify that the workday system functions as planned and does have all the records and approvals in the workday financial systems. And in the next slide, I'll go exactly what they are reviewing. But if you have any questions up to on this one, please feel free to say so. So as I mentioned, I believe they go through about 1,000 validations. Way too many, but so they do the comparative trial balance. They do comparative trial balance on cash, accounts receivable, all our liabilities, all our net assets, our unrestricted balance, unrestricted net assets, and for last year's versus this year. And anytime they see a difference, sometimes as little as 5% difference, they will ask us for explanation. They ask for a list of journal entries. We are processing, hundreds of journal entries every month, but they want first the report, listing all of them, and then they will pick what journal entries they want to review for backup and the approvals. They ask for new amendments, leases. They ask for internal control procedures and any updates to it. Usually they keep on using the same internal control procedures that we provided when RSM came on board, and we just provide them the updates. They thoroughly check all our bank accounts, investments, and make sure that all those balances are verified by bank, which we are showing on our financial statements. The CFA schedules are pertaining to the grants, and they spend a they give special attention to all the grant. They review all the transactions in all the grants to make sure it complies with the grant agreement, and we haven't found, they haven't cited, not the RSM for last 2 years and SP and company for prior years, they have never cited us for not following the grant agreements. They ask for copies of litigation matters. They even send the letter to our AG for his opinion on the litigation matters. They get the listing of all the disbursements, and then they will follow through on it and select certain disbursements for verification and receipts and approval. They want to make sure that we are complying with the GASB requirements. So they want to separate the fiscal year transactions, and in that they will look for it, whether the disbursements should be in, say, if they are auditing fiscal year 21, it should be in fiscal year 21 or fiscal year 22. Same thing, the revenue should be booked in fiscal year 21 versus fiscal year 22. It is not critical for the government or agencies like MES, which are non-profit, but for private industries, it matters because they don't want any company to inflate the revenues, in the current year to show to make them look better. But they apply the same process, what they use for the private companies, to MES as far as the cutoff line deadlines are concerned. As I mentioned, they check the year-end bank statements. They ask for a list of all invoices generated, and they will select few invoices and make sure it complies with our agreement with our clients. List of checks, AR aging listing, capital assets. CIP is the construction in progress. When we are doing the building construction, mainly that was the CIP. Right now, we don't have too many CIP projects going on there. They check accounts payable. What is our liabilities? They find they are really particular about our liabilities to make sure that we have reported all the liabilities that is on our MES books. They do check our best accruals. This fiscal year 20 best accrual was already calculated when they were here last September, and they did verify that. Mid-short closure, post-closure calculations is another big item that they are concentrating on. We do estimates of closure, post-closure, and they want to make sure that we have booked them correctly. They check payroll registers, and then they will ask for about 7 or 10 payroll registers, and then they will select certain employees and make sure we pay them correctly for their rates and the hours. They ask for employee information. OPEB is our MES Retirees Health Plan, and that is a separate account maintained with PNC Investments. So they want to make sure we have enough balances. They verify the actuarial calculations to make sure that we have deposited sufficient funds in that OPEB plan. So these are just some of the items, they give us a long list, maybe double than this, but, I'm just highlighting what they check. We are very happy with RSM, and we're happy with SB and the company, and that I personally welcome them, and, we provide them the full support, and which is evident in the last audit committee meeting that finance is very transparent. We provide them all the reports. We support them with whatever selections they make, and usually we don't find too many findings. I mean, in the last few years, we haven't. Just last year was a little unusual, but other than that, they are very satisfied with our record keeping. Any questions on any of this?
Thank you, Mr. Patel. I think that was probably the best snapshot that I've heard of audited financial statements ever. So that was wonderful.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I think it's important to note that we're talking about two different audits, but they are auditing completely different items. So if there are any questions about the differences between the two audits that we've discussed, now would be a good time to ask. Okay, wonderful. We are at the portion of our agenda for old business and new business, and I am keeping an eye on the time. We have exactly 6 minutes until the full board meeting, but let's start with old business. Is there any old business to be discussed? Any new business? Hearing nothing, I believe we're ready for adjournment unless anyone has anything further to add.
If I might be just given a minute or two, I might not be with this assembly, but I'm in it to a large extent. So what I wanted to say was that what I heard today was about equivalent to Fort Knox. So I think if we're close to Fort Knox, I think we're doing it the right way. So thank you very much, folks who have been working on all this monetary stuff that I would need at Abacus to begin it, and appreciate the work that you're doing. I think it's excellent. So thank you, madam.
And I'd like to, normally I don't like to chime in, but also as a non-committee member, but relating to the two professionals that presented here today, I just want to say that they are both working extremely hard and that they represent MES extremely well. So kudos to both Ms. Khandra and Ms. Patel for all of the hard work that they put in.
Here, here.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Please.
This is Morgan Hall. I make a motion that we adjourn the audit committee meeting.
Thank you. Second? Is JP still with us? Oh, there he is.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I will see everybody momentarily.